Hi folks, welcome to another episode of westernbass.tv. We're summertime out on the California Delta. One of the great techniques that's really taken off out here the last couple years has been the punching technique, and we're out here to show you a little bit about how that works, what we do to use it. And I've got with me today Danny Miller from Miller Punch and Weight System, a new tactic and bait technique that we're using out here. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to show you how it works and maybe improve your fishing here on the Delta doing so using Danny's baits. Stay tuned. We'll be right back from a word with our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Preston Henson from Black Dog Bait Company. I'm here to talk about the new G4 mini cracker, shell cracker. And this is a new 4-inch bait. It weighs in about 1 ounce, and it's a great bait for waking it, walking it, and even cranking it. The line I like to use for this the best is when I'm throwing it on top water. If I'm going to do the walk, the twitch, the walk, or the wake style, I like 65-pound braid. I throw it on a 7-foot to 7.5-foot medium heavy action rod, and when I go to crank this thing will run about 4 feet under on 12-pound test monofilament. And again, I still use the same rod, the 7-foot to 7.5-foot medium heavy. This bait comes in 3 colors: bluegill, ghost bluegill, and baby crappie. And I hope you guys enjoy the bait. It's a fish catching machine.
The beauty about this time of the river and what we're doing out here with these punching weights, Danny, is, you know, it's real clear. We can see all the bluegills running around in through here, and you know, these baits that we're throwing up underneath here not only represent, you know, the crawdad forage that most of it would think that these bass are eating constantly, but you know, they eat a lot of those bluegills. So these baits, you know, you know, we can get these baits up underneath this stuff where all those bluegills are up underneath there in the edges, and you know, they're nice the way that thing goes through there. You know, that was the epitome of the greatness of this bait. When you throw it in there, that weight of yours, where you can just sit there and shake it, you know, and it just falls right through.
And sometimes it's quite a bit longer than what a guy might think before you can get the point of that weight to start.
You know, for
but
those
if you give it enough time, it'll definitely.
It will eventually just fall through there, huh?
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of neat the way we rig these things up. Now I've got mine rigged. We've got one of those 2-ounce weights here, and a little bobber stopper up at the front. And I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about that, because you rigged that a little different. I like putting that thing on there where it goes through, and then I slide that little weight right down there on the front of it. And I know you slide it up a little further sometimes.
Sometimes I'm about 6-8 inches above it, so that it give that weight a little bit of time to get through that before it jerks the bait on down through it. And if it's sitting on the bottom, it'll give that fish a little bit of time to pick it up without feeling the weight. So I do kind of have a tendency to leave it up there a little bit higher, and it has helped me catch a few more fish at times.
Yeah, it's kind of nice the way that design works, where when we throw that bait in there and that weight lays on that grass, as you can see, it's going to want to find its way down through the hole. That's pretty ingenious design you come up there with that point. How'd that all come about?
Well, that was actually about 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, when I first started designing it, I had a sinker system, and I came from the top to the bottom and stuck a hole in it, and I figured that has to be there no matter what. And laying it out there on top of the mat, it didn't do anything. It just kind of brought it back and didn't let it penetrate or anything, and it just made it so tough to get it to start, you know. And I said, all I got to do is make that hole come out the side of that weight, and it would make it stand on its end and do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and it not only goes through, you know, we're fishing this heavy, thick periwinkle, you know, where you got that 2 foot of plant above the surface and another foot down below it. It goes through that cheesy stuff really well, too.
It does.
You know, the stuff guys throw the frogs over all weekend long, you know, right. And the frogs are coming up going bop, 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 and not coming through and getting it. The beauty with this thing is, when that's happening, you can use this bait to just go right through there. I like the way it just goes right through it. And you know, when you come back out, it comes up the pointed side.
Exactly.
And it doesn't grab a whole handful of moss.
Yeah, it it makes it fish a whole lot easier without having to clean that stuff off your weight, and allows you to get in and out of it without bringing all that stuff with it. It's a lot safer too. It comes out easy.
Yeah,
you're not snapping it and trying to get your weight back. And
one of the things that I noticed, and we were talking about this earlier, was that you know, when we're using the various tungsten weights or a jig, it tends to, when you're pulling that thing out, a lot of times it tends to hang out and you're sitting there pulling, and then that thing comes shooting back at you like a bullet.
Yeah.
Whereas this thing, it just pulls right out almost every single time. And I think it's important that, you know, guys aren't sitting there snapping real hard, because what ends up happening is, you know, your hook's going to grab some of those roots and stuff, and that's what you're going to get hung up on if you're shaking it real hard. And this thing, man, you just pull it real easy and it just comes right out of there.
We're just kind of running with it.
Yeah.
I saw it. I saw it.
That was a little 2-pound machine gunner.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. I get impatient sometimes. If I can't shake it through in about 5 or 6, I pick it up and throw it right back.
Yeah, a guy needs to really let it sit there a little bit and give it enough time. I mean, there's things you're not going to get through, but
yeah, I mean, you're not going to get through every single time. Yeah.
But I mean, your percentages are so much better, and you can fish it so much easier. You know, I pitch and flip a lot more than I like to call it punching.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's a different technique, and I really haven't come up with a name as far as to put with this weight. I mean, I call it a punching weight because it does what a lot of guys reflect as punching, but it fishes so easy.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, punching is a lot harder, bigger stuff, you know, and that's why I kind of lean more towards pitching and flipping it.
Well, I use it a lot too. I've found the last few weeks out here, and it's kind of like what a lot of those Bassmaster guys were doing when they were here back in March. You know, those fish were buried down in those thick weeds, and you get that weed line, and everybody likes to fish on the outside of the weed line.
Yeah.
Well, we've got so much of that weed in here this year, and then these fish are buried up underneath that. And this thing, you can just lay this bait right on the top of that elodia, that coontail grass, and shake it, and all of a sudden it's falling right down through it. And it goes into that stuff a lot easier than it does this thick, heavy matted cover.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's where, you know, that's a true pitching and flipping technique more so than punching. When we're trying to get it through this real heavy, matted, thick cover, or the cheese, you know, that's where the punching is punching, and
right,
flipping is flipping. And I got that little bugger that time. That was a little bugger. You know, and that's the beauty about this technique. You'll catch those Cuccia sized fish throwing that punch weight too, you know. Even, you know, little fish like that really tear them baits up.
They do.
You know, they get that bait in, and it gets to the point where you got to replace them. Now, I've been using the mended on mine. I throw them in a little pile. There's one. There's one. Hey, we got us a little school here of babies. That's a keeper, though. That's a keeper.
These look pretty good. Sorry about that.
Right in there where I was at, huh?
Yeah, pretty close in there.
He wanted it. Well, you know, so here we've been fishing all that deeper stuff,
Yeah.
and then we move into some real shallow stuff and catch one.
Yep.
Hey, wax a keeper on it though. Hey Danny,
Yes, sir.
remember I was telling you about fishing that thing out in the open water on a hard bottom?
I saw that.
That fish right there, kid, there was not a blade of grass on that Thule island there, and he come right off that drop off.
I saw that.
Versatile bait. I mean, you don't have to punch with it. You can fish this thing out in the open water. You know, we haven't been getting a whole lot of bites up underneath the stuff, and the ones that we have kind of been
I agree.
beating us to the punch, and so I figured, well, let's start fishing the outside.
Hey, this is Randy Pringle, the fishing instructor, and we're here at the Berkley Big Bass Challenge. And fortunately for us, Berkley brought in about 3 new baits, and I'm going to describe one of them. It's called the split belly. The split belly is like a hollow belly, but what they've done is they've taken the regular swim bait, which a lot of anglers wanted to have the belly split open so the hook ratio is better. So if you look at this right now, I'm going to open this baby wide open. So if you used a like a EWG hook with a weighted on it or something like that, this bait would allow you to slide up and through the bait, allowing that better hook set because it'll collapse more. So with the split belly, it's going to make a lot more hook sets when you're fishing your swim baits. So the next time you go out and buy a swim bait, try the Berkley new split belly swim bait.
So a lot of people ask me, well, what's a little trick you do, you know, when you're fishing? When I'm fishing grass and slime, a little trick I like to do is I melt my barb upside down. A lot of people say, well, man, I thought you said to melt it, you know, going that way. Well, usually I do that, but if you're fishing a lot of slime or a lot of grass, sometimes a little bit of grass or slime will collect on the tip of that barb because it's so strong, like a spur out there. One thing I like to do in heavy, heavy grass is turn it upside down and melt it on that way. That way when you Texas rig your bait, there's no barb sticking up out of your bait. The barb's under your bait, it's just as strong, and it hides it from the slime. It's completely smooth. Get yourself some punch hooks today.
See the fish. There we go. Actually, just a little guy. And, you know, he scaled down, went to a smaller beaver, and we've seen that fish moving around in there. And first time I threw in there, it smoked it. First time I threw in there, it smoked it pretty good, and then I just kind of kept probing, you know, 6 feet away, 6 feet away, 6 feet away, 6 feet away, making casts around that perimeter where I saw that fish and got first bit, and she finally came back and got it. Well, see, now maybe all those bites we were missing earlier were just smaller fish. You know, that smaller beaver's catching them. That one was right in the thick grass on the point. It really wasn't underneath the mat, but he was buried up underneath the grass. There's another one we saw moving in the grass today. They're kind of sitting right up in the roots, and you can see them moving. And all you got to do is just drop it and get it to fall right where you see the grass moving. And then little guys are going right down and following it up and eating it. Yeah, they're getting a little bigger. That one's up to about the 2-pound range. That's bait. Big old bait. They're just chewing right on that thing. little better fish. There we go. Another nice little chunky. That one's getting closer to 2.5, 3 pounds. Nice and dark color, sitting up underneath that mat.
Oh no, I'm laying on ice. Oh, nothing to know of. Not that I can tell.
This is one of them ones where they're so big they won't come up. Nice, fat, chunky California Delta punching fish. It's one of the problems you get in there, you know, you get those bigger fish, and a lot of times I've got to do like we did, push that motor right up in there and get them. That was about 3.5 pounder, 4 pounder there. Miller punching weight. You know, there's just not a lot of opportunities outside of fishing this weight where you're going to be able to get in there and get fish like that. That's the reason why we use this bait. Gets us down in there. River punching fish, California Delta. Great job. There, that's good. That might be a good one. I don't know. Oh yeah, there we go. Nice chunky little fish. Well, there you go, people. Miller weights, punching in the thick, heavy cover. This thing goes through this mat far easier than any other weight I've ever used. And as you can see by the last hour and a half today, we changed baits a little bit. We started fishing some points, and they're eating that thing pretty regularly. You get out here during the summer, get you some Miller weights, tie them on. You can try the new gold ones. You can try the new powder coated green ones. Get out here and punch the mats in the Delta and Clear Lake. You're going to find a whole lot more bass than what you are fishing out in open water right now. All right, we're going to go into a little, show you how to tie these rigs up. There's been a lot of questions. You know, anglers have had mixed emotions on which way to do this, but there's really only one way to rig this thing up. And the way these Miller weights are set up, you've got a hole in the top, and you've got an exit hole with a little cave that comes out of the middle of the bait, and it's real important that you do insert it through the top, your braid through the top, so that it comes out the exit hole. And we'll explain why it is important to do it this way. But first, before you put that weight on, what you need to do is you need to get a little bobber stopper. These are the ones that I think Danny's got in his kits now. He's got the set of these little bobber stoppers. In here they got a little wire, and the bobber stopper shoved in there with a little loop on it. The other type that you can get is the true tungsten bobber stoppers, which are kind of cool because they're a little longer, and they've got a little tab that'll fit right down in the hole and kind of hold that thing right in place. And this one is the same concept, where you have a little loop at the end of the line, and basically you're just sliding the braided line through that loop, creating a V back, and then sliding the bobber stopper in there. With these, you just pick one out, slide it through the hole, and create your little V, and you just move that bobber stopper and pull on the wire up the line. It pulls that bobber stopper and puts it right on the line. Slide that up far enough to where it's out of the way. and then you slide your line on. Now, some guys, they don't want their weight moving at all. And they'll put a bobber stopper at the front end as well as the back end. It might help your bait from banging and sliding up and down and tearing your baits up and bouncing on the hooks, but I don't do it because I like the bait to swing a little freer. Also, where that hook point hits this brass weight, you tend to get, you know, a little bit of a clicking sound, and along with all that flash and so forth, that little clicking sound, yeah, it could get you a bite or two more. So I don't put that bobber. I just use the one bobber stopper on the end, and then I'm basically tying a Palomar with my braid. I'm using a 5/0. This is a Yamamoto Sugoi rigging hook, worming hook. You can use the EWGs. You know, they've got those new little short shank trocars. I'll show you one of those in just a second. I don't like the short shank, that little trocar hook. It's got a nice little collar on it. I think it works well for skinnier baits, long slender baits. But for these beavers, I have had a lot of problems with that hook sliding. I just tie a Palomar nice and tight and cut your tab off. And then the bait will just slide right in. You just hook your bait on. Take a double wide beaver. And what I've been doing is I've been coming right down to where it meets the bend of the hook, popping it through, and then slide it down in to where that line goes all the way inside the bait and the bend of the shank comes out. And then you can just pop it right in the middle of the V, and you're set and ready to go. And one of the things you'll find when you're fishing these beavers, especially when you're punching a lot, is that crevice up the middle eventually is going to get ripped. I've got beavers where they're actually in two sections. So a lot of times you can plug that thing in the fatty part on either side and get a little more mileage out of your beaver. But that typically is how I'll start off. And then we just slide our weight down. And you take that bobber stopper, and that holds that bait right there. And the way that works, it allows that bait to sit off the end of the weight, and when it lands on that mat and you are lifting on your line, it lifts that weight so that it falls through the crack and takes your bait right down on through. That's how it works. And a lot of times you can just take it and just bounce it, bounce it, bounce it, bounce it, and that weight will just eventually work its way through and fall right down in there. It's just a brilliant idea and concept, where you'll have regular weights on the head, you know, and sometimes they don't get that nose down all the time, and you can get a lot of wasted time trying to get that bait down. This one, you know, when you throw it up, a lot of times it'll land straight down in and just take that bait right down. If it happens to land sideways, you got that cool little mechanism that just kind of keeps it up. And you know, this is Danny and I talked a little bit about. He uses it as a Carolina rig too, and that bait will just tick 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 right along the top of those rocks, and it'll flow right behind that bait, that weight, as you're using it as a Carolina rig. Now Danny likes to fish it this way with that bobber stopper about 5 or 6 inches up. That way, and the weight sometimes will go down, and when it sits on the bottom, that weight will be on the bottom, and your bait will sit there and suspend a little bit, and it'll float and fall around. Sometimes that can be a lot more effective. You know, you just got to kind of play to the fish, find out what works best for you. But typically you do got to have that bobber stopper, because you don't want that thing running way up, you know, a foot up the line, and then the weight goes through, and your bait's going to get hung up, and you really create a lot of problems if you don't use that bobber stopper. That resolves a lot of issues for you.
Oh man, I'm all out of that bomber
more crankbait.
Yeah, Bass Tackle Depot? Oh, I'm on the water. I'm out of bait. I need some 6A red bombers, chartreuse and blue. Fast you can get them here.
Extra special delivery from Bass Tackle Depot.
Dude, you're a blessing. Bass Tackle Depot does it again. Rain or shine.
Good luck, man. Go get an extra delivery.
Thank you, BassTackleDepot.com.
This is Rob Linden. I'm 24 years old. I've been competitive bass fishing in California for 10 years. For those 10 years, I've been fishing with the club Bass and Tubes. It's a kickboat based club here in California. It's pretty much the entry level for competitive fishing. You know, there's the pro, there's the amateur that fishes in the back of the boat, and then there's kickboaters like me. I mean, it's cheap, fun tournaments. Everybody's real friendly. Learn something every time. And for me, that's just what I do. If I had more money, maybe I'd be fishing out of a bass boat, but as for now, kickboating is my thing. Just looking to find a way to move up to the next level somehow. Hopefully skipping under trees like that will actually get me a fish here. First fish of the day, small fish, about a pound. We're gonna have to work our way through these fish to get to the 4+, but I ate the frog. As long as they're doing that, I'll be having fun. That was a pretty aggressive strike too. So, in other words, it didn't just come up and roll on it, so that lets me know that other fish around here are gonna be probably just as aggressive. He's up tight to the ivy up on that rock bank. Ate it right after the pause, gave it a twitch. Twitch, pause. Twitch, twitch, pause. That's generally the cadence I like to go with. It's a little bit better fish. Makes up for that one I just missed. Well, good, things are starting to look up. It's about 2 bites in the last 3 minutes. Now we just gotta keep covering water. Try to get our bait in the water as much as possible while this tide is still coming in. It's our best chance to catch a fish. Bigger fish just don't want to eat it today. Well, at least it's a fish though. And it was on a frog. It makes me feel better.
Hey D, how you doing?
Hey Chad, how you doing?
Pretty good. How's the fishing today?
It's tougher than a hoot owl out there today, but we caught a few little ones.
I gotta ask you a question. How do you stay so consistent in what you do when you do the FLWs and the Angler's Choice? You're always in the money. You're always right there. How do you stay so consistent?
My secret weapon has basically been these right here. Bass West magazine.
Bass West USA has all the latest Western bass angling techniques. With the most current information and the latest on swim baits, every bass angler should subscribe to Bass West USA.